Welcome back, everybody. This is another episode of the Exodus Project. I'm your host, Steve Eisenhower, and I'm joined with my good friend Davon Mays again from Clouds of Torah.
Peace, peace. How you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Good.
And today we are going to move right along with our Mark of the Beast series that we've been going over for the last few weeks. And yeah, today we're going to give a little bit of context on what exactly the Mark of the Beast could be, what it is. But before we get started, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, give Davon and I a big thumbs up, and check the description for his books and all sorts of other resources that you may need. All right, so let's hop right into it. Coming through okay?
Looking good. The biggest lie.
The biggest lie. And everyone will find out why we call it that in just a minute, right?
Yeah, if you haven't figured that out, yeah, you got some studying to do.
Right. The mark.
The mark, Revelation 13:6. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand and or on their foreheads. Strong's 54 Ada, Chiragma, a mark, a stamp or impression. Usage, sculpture, engraving, stamp, or sign. Helps word studies.
Interesting.
Zeragma, properly an engraving, etching, figuratively a mark providing undeniable identification, like a symbol giving irrefutable connection between parties. Zeragma brand was originally an impress on a coin or a seal used by an engraver or a die. The identification marker, stamp, branding iron later became like with an owner's unique brand mark. So the first thing I'm getting is 2,000 years ago, before people were thinking computer chips, they were literally thinking some type of a stamp or a symbol.
Yep.
And it says originally an impress on a coin. So for instance, give the Caesar's things unto Caesar. There was some identification markers on that coin, or, something engraved on a coin. So for people to be looking for a chip 2,000 years ago, even 100 years ago, was not on the mind.
Right. Or sculptures or engravings or etchings, tattoos, statues, all sorts of things that could bear the mark, the name, the number. And we'll get into it as we move forward, but statues are a main thing. We talked about statues for quite a while last time. I think the biggest takeaway from this and the usages and what the word really means is that this is some type of physical designation, not some chip in your arm that
you can't see,
that people can locate you. This is a sign, right? This is something you can see, something that can make it easily distinguishable from other things.
It says a mark providing undeniable identification.
Right.
If I got a chip in, you don't know what I have in my arm or my finger or my arm, wherever this chip is located. Right. But 2,000 years ago, people knew exactly with a branding iron. Like that's pretty, self-evident of what you got on your body. They do that to animals.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing you think about when you hear about a branding iron in the context of 2,000 years ago is slavery. Even in recent slave culture, there was brandings with literal branding irons to know who you belong to.
Right at the bottom of the screen, it says later became like with an owner's unique brand mark, owner's. So nobody's walking around 2,000 years ago trying to figure out what's in somebody's arm when they can just look on their body for some type of sign or engraving.
Right.
Oh yeah. Now it says he causes all, both small and great. Now the question is, who is the he? And we've been talking about this. If the he is the beast or the Antichrist, and Romans 13 says you got to obey the superior authority, and at this time, this beast would be that superior authority. are you going against what Paul said? But he said he got that from Jesus, Galatians 1:11 and 12. So I'm going to keep bringing this back and beating the dead horse to y'all understand the mark of the beast comes from Christianity, because it was the ruling authority at the time when these books were written.
Right.
You would not be looking to anybody else to be the beast except for them.
Yep. Paul says in Galatians, in Christ Jesus, there's no male, female, free, slave, circumcised, uncircumcised, Jew and Greek. He says it's all one in Jesus. So just like this is saying everyone, all free, slave, doesn't matter who you are, you're going to have to get this mark. Paul says the same thing in a different context, that when you've accepted the new covenant, you're all the same in Jesus, freed or slave. That's in there, free or slave.
Yeah. And if you didn't accept Christianity, once the Holy Roman Empire adopted Christianity, what happened? You dealt with the consequences, as Romans 13 says.
Yep. Okay, so marks in Greco-Roman society.
In Greco-Roman society, Greek, stigmata, and Latin, stigma, mark, stamp, or brand. The custom among Greeks to tattoo bodies came from the Persians. They used tattoos to mark slaves and criminals in case they tried to escape. In late Roman times, when the imperial army consisted mainly of mercenaries, it was decided to tattoo them so it was easy to recognize deserters. Plato mentioned that those guilty of sacrilege should be tattooed and exiled from the state. Suetonius, a Roman writer from the 1st century CE, wrote that some of the well-born citizens were marked on the order of Emperor Caligula, so-called stigmatum notis. Many men of honorable rank were first disfigured with the marks of branding irons and then condemned to the mines to work at building roads or to be thrown to the wild beasts, or else he shut them up in cages on all fours like animals or had them sawn asunder. Vegetius, writer and Roman historian living in the second half of the 4th century CE, in his treatise Epitoma Rei Militaris, he mentions that the recruitment to a Roman army should begin with testing the strength, then assigned to the unit, and later tattooing with the unit sign. Aetius of Amida, a Byzantine 6th century medic, mentions in Medicare Artis Principis that the tattoos were on the hand. As in Greece, Roman slaves and criminals were tattooed in order to control them better and to find it easy to escape. So in Greco-Roman society, what was the thought process for this tattoo or these marks or signs? They just basically were able to identify slaves and or mark your unit in a military brigade or whatever you were involved in. And
shows who you belong to.
Pretty much, right.
Either your slave master or the unit you belong to, right? And they say in the military that you sign your life away.
Yeah, I mean, today Marines get tattoos, Army people get tattoos, So this is nothing new.
Right.
This is nothing new. There's just there are identification markers, and they're a sign, something you can see. People have a problem, with understanding what sign is. For instance, in Isaiah 7:14, it says, "Behold, I will give you a sign." Even though it's not talking about a virgin birth is not a sign. You can't see that she's a virgin.
That's true.
How would you be able to see that?
Right.
You can see she's pregnant.
Genesis, behold, I'll put my sign, a bow in the clouds.
Right. That's visible. You can't see if somebody is a virgin.
Right.
So I mean, the whole concept of a sign is something that you see. If a stop sign is hidden, what's the point of it?
Yep. And over again on this slide, we're seeing historians, emperors, the empire using these physical stamps, these brands on the right hand, the forehead, to show we own you. You belong to us.
Wards of the state.
In the 1st century context, if you're a Christian and you're supposed to be like the antithesis to the empire, right? That's what the claim normally is, that the mark is the bad people, because we have good marks in Revelation too, that people have the tattoo of the or the mark of the lamb on their forehead, etc. It's the same word. It's showing a distinguishing. It even says that Jesus in his second coming, right, when he's coming to destroy all the enemies, has a mark on his leg. Does that mean Jesus got a tattoo? So like these people need to understand when to take these things literally or not. It's so far it's most easily to understand that these people were needing to have writings in words they can understand, just like we do.
Right.
You need context, and your present context is how you're going to understand it the most completely. And if the dominating force at the time was using physical brands or marks or tattoos or stamps to show which side of the fence you were on, it's the most common denominator is what lines up to be what the context is, right? Not some vaccine or microchip 2,000 years later.
Right.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it can be chalked up to cognitive dissonance too. Is the guy hasn't come back. They've been waiting all this time. They've been waiting for the end times to happen. They've been saying it's at the doorstep for the last 2,000 years. So they just have to keep reformulating over and over and over again as to what these things could mean, even though you have, you know, volumes of material from church fathers saying what this stuff meant.
And when to apply it. For instance, Mark chapter 1, verse 15 tells us the time is fulfilled, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. That would mean the fourth beast had to been destroyed according to the book of Daniel chapter 2.
Right.
So if Daniel's beast is destroyed, ushering in the new kingdom, which would be the kingdom that should not be destroyed forever, that means all the stuff in Revelation is already took place.
Right.
You had to already go through all these different scenarios to get to the final stage of where the fourth beast is gone and the kingdom of heaven is at hand.
Right.
You can't jump past the fourth beast and go into the kingdom of heaven and then have the fourth beast return.
Right.
That doesn't work.
Right.
Because the fourth beast is supposed to start killing people and all these things. Well, that's not the kingdom of heaven. Now see how this doesn't work with the Christian doctrine. The mark of the beast is actually, it's painted into a scenario, but you have to read it in backwards.
Right.
If you read Mark first, go ahead.
Realistically, it's drawing the battle lines. It's showing who the subscribers to the beast are versus who the subscribers to the kingdom of God are. That's the most basic way we can put this.
Basic, very, very good point. So if you read the gospel first and understood in your time that the kingdom of heaven is at hand, and then you read Revelation, you'll be like, wait a minute, you skipped a part. When did all this happen? But if you read Revelation before you got a hold of Mark, you would understand, oh, this is what's happening now. The beast and these Roman emperors, that's what's going on now. That's why everybody, and we've shown all the references, not everybody, but a lot of Christians point to the Romans as the beast. So if that's the case, if the beast was already on site and the Antichrist was already on site, according to the book of John, right? And Paul said he had to stand in the temple while it was built, and then the kingdom of heaven was to come in, that would even make sense. But that's not how people understand it, because people are under the impression that the mark of the beast in the book of Revelation is a futuristic 2,000 years in the future prophecy, but it was basically a current event. Right. Just like everything we're reading now. This was all current to the people in the first century, and up to the if you go down to Vegetius, what is that? Vegetius.
Yeah.
It says writer and the Roman historian living in the second half of the 4th century talked about these same type of tattoos in the unit that he would, for the Roman army. So all this stuff is in the past. This is not looking forward to a sign, though they were already using these signs.
Right. Continued.
In the early Roman Empire, slaves were found to be branded with the patron's initials. Often the slave also had a tattoo on his forehead: "Stop me, I am running away." It was extremely disgraceful. Ancient Romans marked runaway slaves with the letters FVG or FUG for fugitivus.
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 Yep. Mm-hmm.
Fugitive. We use the same
Fugitive. Yeah.
context. Yeah,
Running
so
away.
yeah,
Yep.
fugitive,
Mm-hmm.
right? Actually, a good movie with Harrison Ford, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
Plato's Laws 9, 854 states, whoever is caught robbing a temple, if he be foreigner or slave, his curse shall be branded on his forehead. We see right here with the link, Imperium
Imperium
Romanum,
Romanum. Yep.
Imperium Romanum, article tattoos in Roman world. So, I mean, Plato's laws, y'all know how ancient Plato was. A branding on the
How much
forehead.
Platonic philosophy is in the New Testament?
Right. He says right here, his curse shall be branded on his forehead. So this was nothing new to these people.
Right.
They didn't need to go 2,000 years to the future to understand what a mark on your forehead meant.
Mm-hmm. It was meant
Especially
to.
what a sign
It
was.
was to identify. Completely to identify. If you
Right.
have a large fugitivus on your forehead, no one's no one's going to question what your crime was,
Right.
and no one's going to question if you're a free man. No one's going. They're going to know you're a slave
You're a
if
slave.
you have a big branded initial on your arm. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And a branding iron, that's more so a stamp than a tattoo. You
Right.
know, it's a hot iron pushed right into your skin to leave a permanent mark.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, watch any first century Roman documentary and how they treated slaves and the way slaves were managed will most certainly come up because slaves built the empire. I was reading an article and it said that really when the church like got very influential and abolished slavery in the empire, it kind of like set the empire back a couple hundred years because the empire was built on the backs of slaves. You know, free
Messing up
labor.
the money.
Yeah, you can put up you can put up the Colosseum in just a few years if you have thousands upon thousands of free workers. So that's just something to consider. All those slaves would have been marked. They had no choice but to serve the empire, you know, and they would have been very easily distinguishable. And there's a figure, I think this might be first century. 1 in 3 people in Rome were slaves. So if this religion is catching on like wildfire and it's spreading through the slave ranks, no wonder it went so fast.
Right. Slaves, be obedient to your masters.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the New Testament says. Even the
Yeah.
cruel ones.
Mm-hmm. Paul's addressing slaves a lot. It's all over his writings.
Yeah.
So if you're a slave and you read, oh well, the empire is over me and I shouldn't rebel because God wants me to be a slave. God put Rome over me for a reason. It kind of plays right into the role you're playing in life as a slave branded by the empire.
And Paul tries to play on that same kind of language, calling himself a prisoner of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what? Prisoner? Well, that's a little weird, but anyway, so yeah, this is how it was.
Stigmata and the beast.
Galatians 6:17. From now on, let no one cause me trouble, for I bear on my body the marks, stigmata of Jesus.
And that's
Did
Paul.
did he really bear those marks of Jesus, or was it symbolic?
Hmm.
So if you're gonna say that, oh, Paul was just symbolically speaking, the book of Revelation is full of symbolic talk
Right.
or language. So why would that be literal and Paul's right here be, symbolic? In Christian
Mm-hmm.
mysticism, bodily marks, scars, or pains corresponding to those of the crucified Jesus, that is, on the hands, on the feet, near the heart, and sometimes on the head from the crown of thorns or shoulders and back from carrying the cross and scourging. According to the Roman Catholic Church, the presence of stigmata is a sign of mystical union with the suffering of Christ. Britannica.com/topic stigmata. Pictured Zlatko Sudak allegedly received a mark of the stigmata. It took the form of a cross and printed deeply on his forehead. That's pretty like a perfect looking cross. That doesn't
Yeah.
look like a
Right.
wound.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, come on, bro. That looks pretty
Right.
symmetric, if you ask me.
That looks pretty symmetric. Looks like lipstick too.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It looks professional. That's a professional stigmata you got
Mm.
there on yourself. So,
Yep.
you know, so again, if this was the case, if this mark was his happens to be a cross, and you couldn't buy or sell. So if the Christian empire, which was with the Romans at the time, did have this mark on your forehead or your hand or whatever, if you was walking around with a cross on your forehead, I'm pretty sure they didn't think you were a threat.
Right.
But it's still not a chip. It's not a chip. Now, today, can the government put chips in people? Absolutely. Animals got chips in them right now.
Mm-hmm.
People around the world, there are some military people. There's some jobs who have people that have chips for access to buildings. But
Right.
can you buy or sell without it? Yes, you can.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to have that when you go to the store. You don't have to have that when you go to Sam's Club or Walgreens or wherever you're going to go. That's voluntary, and you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to take that job. And nobody's being killed if they refuse this mark. Like all the things that Revelations is talking about is not happening based on the way it's told. And this
Mm-hmm.
mark is a sign,
Yep. Yeah, it's showing where his allegiances are, right?
right? It's a stamp.
He's a
Look,
cross on his forehead.
this guy literally has the one on his forehead. It's not an internal cross. It's not on his heart. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I bear the cross on my heart, right? No. Paul says, I bear on my body the marks or the
Right.
stigmata of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't say he got a chip. So why does it have to be physical if it can be symbolic?
Mm-hmm.
You have to pick and choose when it applies.
Right. And back to the cognitive dissonance issue, um, it's like every decade there's a new version of this. Like back in the 90s when I was a kid, and the pastors would preach against credit cards. Oh, well, they have all your information. You can't buy or sell without one. It's over and over and over again. Any new innovation in the world of, financial commerce, well, that's the new mark. You carry it in your pocket and hand it to the cashier with your right hand. You know what I mean? Like, just,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like it's
it,
it's
it right. Right.
very dissonant over and over and over again. That just whatever they see as the new trend, new fad, is clearly the new mark, right?
So I'm a devil's advocate. Let's say, for argument's sake, is that the book of Revelations is a future prophecy, and it is eventually going to turn into a government official saying, look, without this mark implanted in you, you can't buy or sell. Again, the superior authorities are instituted by God. And of course,
Right.
Jesus is God to the Christians. So again, you still have to get the chip or you're going to rebel against God in Romans 13. So
Mm-hmm.
however you look at this,
It's just one
you
big circle.
it's a huge circle. Either you accept Romans 13 or it's false. If it's false, then that means we got a problem with Paul. And then Paul says Jesus gave him that information right. So now you got a problem with Jesus. So then the whole thing
Right.
starts to fall apart. So
Yep.
if it's true, then why are you scared to take the mark? If,
And I'll devil's advocate you and say, well, what if Romans 13 was only written for that generation?
okay, then if that's the case, then the kingdom of heaven came after that generation or before would be my question. Because if you say it came after, that would mean the time wasn't fulfilled and Jesus lied. And if it came before, and then nobody, basically the world was not subject to this, it was only for that generation,
Mm-hmm.
then that means why are Christians teaching it as if it's current?
Right. that's the inerrancy problem that New Testament adherents need to worry about is not everything can be true at the same time.
Right.
Either some of it's inerrant and some of it's not, it's only edifying, or none of it's inerrant, It
Right.
can't all be.
Yeah,
That's
it's
something they're gonna have
yeah.
to struggle with. That's something you're gonna have to work out on your own. And Dave Vaughn and myself worked it out on our own and came to a different conclusion.
Right.
So
Revelations 13 is current. Then that
Romans
means the
13,
kingdom of heaven was not, it was not the time for the kingdom of heaven in Mark 1:15. That would be a lie. The
right?
fourth beast cannot come after the kingdom is established, because that kingdom will not fall.
Right.
So
The seal of God on their foreheads.
Revelation 9:4, they, giant horrific locusts, were told not to harm any grass, green plant, or tree on the earth. They could only harm the people who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. Strong's 4973. Sfragita, seal or
Sounds good.
signet. Usage: seal, signet ring, the impression of a seal, that which the seal attests the proof. Like you see these letters and people put the stamp, the little letter, they took some little wax, right? And they stamped a
Mm-hmm.
little stamp off in there. Is this a computer chip? Is this inserted under the skin or in the foreheads? Is this a thought process? I'm pretty
Mm,
sure people have heard it taught that this is simply the way you see things, your ideology, how you view the world, right? That's the seal of
right.
God. How you
Mm-hmm.
behave in this world, your mental comprehension of things. Hebrews 4
Right.
and 12. For the word of God is living and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing even to the division of soul and spirit and joints and marrow, and is a discerner of the thoughts and the intents of the heart. So your mind frame, right? Psalm 149:6. May the praise of God be in their mouths and a double-edged sword in their hands. Now, we know this is not literal, this is symbolic. So again, is this seal of God literal or is it symbolic? Are
Right.
you walking around with a stamp on your forehead?
Right. Because a signet stamp is not really all that different from a brand.
Pretty much, right? It's still,
So
it's something you can see,
yeah, and
right?
it's something to identify who you're like what the for example, when a letter is stamped with a signet, it's so you know who it's coming from.
Right.
It's to give you some context on who this letter is from and who it's officially sealed by. Right? This is an officially sealed letter. I'm sure
Right.
a lot of people are familiar with that type of language if they've ever gotten like a letter from the IRS or something like that, right? Officially sealed.
Officially sealed. Yeah, that you can tell if there's somebody means business by the way a letter comes.
Right. So if
So
if this is to be taken in a figurative manner to denote whose side the people on, why should that mark be any different? Why should that brand be any different?
and the interesting thing, as far as from a Jewish perspective or Israelite perspective, if you had on tefillin, that would be a clear mark on your forehead and a sign on your arm.
Yeah.
If you're
Yeah,
walking
it would.
around with tefillin on, pretty much they know you're probably an Orthodox Jew. Chances
Hmm.
are, you know what I mean? So they already had this seal of God on their foreheads if you want to use any type of seal that the people would have been familiar with. They didn't have to reinvent the wheel on that one.
Right.
You know, Deuteronomy and even in the New Testament, when Jesus says phylacteries, a lot of
Hmm.
Christians don't know that that's talking about tefillin.
Right.
Go and read your commentaries and your dictionaries. If Jesus was a Orthodox Jew who did not sin, he wore tefillin,
Right.
or he
Hmm.
was a sinner. And what I thought about, I never read in the New Testament where somebody called him out for not wearing tefillin, because
Right.
they would have, according to the way the
Hmm.
text is set up. They was coming at him on nick and picking every little thing. You don't fast when we fast. How come y'all picking stuff on the Sabbath, right? So if he wasn't
Hmm.
wearing tefillin on a daily basis like everybody else, they would have said something.
For sure.
So
Do you know archaeologists found a set of tefillin from the first century that are identical to the ones they have now?
I wouldn't doubt it, because the Jews have traditions that just don't stop.
Mhm.
They the oral Torah, and that's another thing too. Without the oral Torah, you can't even make tefillin.
Right.
So for Jesus to even tell you that they're called phylacteries when the Torah don't even tell you what they're called. It just says to put something on your hand and your forehead, but it doesn't tell you what they are and how to make them. So right there, Jesus is talking oral Torah, if you didn't know that.
Right.
So for anybody who says, oh, the rabbis made it up, well, guess what? Jesus is not quoting, but Jesus is telling you the oral Torah in the first century.
Right.
No getting around that.
Is this literal or symbolic?
If the beast and the dragon are symbolic, is it possible that the mark of the beast is also figurative in Revelation? Is it possible? It's just a question. As demonstrated, penal and military marking to show the superior officers or masters was a common practice at that time. Could this language be used figuratively to show where allegiances lie and not literal markings? No literal beast or dragon will rise out of the sea or be thrown down from heaven. We know, I don't think we're going to see a dragon fall out the sky, y'all. A dragon was not literally locked up somewhere.
Right. And we've spoken before that the sea represents the expanse of the world.
Right.
Nations.
There's a law of the sea and the law of the land. Like these are terms, right? Go to your Black's Law Dictionary and look it up. If these are figurative, can the mark be a representation of something or an ideology? I'm just asking, is it possible? The 144,000 have signs in their forehead. Is this a computer chip or is this an ideological marker showing what or who they believe in? Like we talked about earlier, is it a thought process? Or do they have a righteous chip in their head, right? If it's not the mark of the beast, is it a chip? Or if this sign in their forehead is not a chip, why does the sign in Revelation 13:6 have to be a chip? What other type of sign or symbol would they have? Because according to the Torah, if these are 144,000 people are from the 12 tribes of Israel, if they're Jewish, even though they skipped the tribe of Dan, I believe, but if they're Jewish,
yeah, they did. Yep, they replaced Dan with Joseph. Yeah.
So if they're Jewish, then their sign or their symbol on their forehead will be tefillin, or you're gonna have to say they got a new commandment.
Right. And if we are to take it literal, look where the signs on the hands and on the foreheads are showing up in the church. Right. We demonstrated stigmata. Paul said he had stigmata
on his body.
So if these markings are meant to be taken literally, we have things that are showing allegiances all over the place in Catholic tradition. And
they're not chips.
And a lot of times it's showing up on your hands and your head.
Yeah, and they're not computer chips under your skin. So is it literal or symbolic? Either way you go, you're still going to have to say, is it current? Because if it's current, then Mark 1:15 cannot be true. The time was not fulfilled and the kingdom of heaven was not in your midst.
Something to think about. Sorry. Yeah, well, that's the last slide. So any final thoughts?
Well, again, you're really gonna have to start thinking about, when do I want to place this book of Revelation? If I place it after Mark 1:15, that makes Mark 1:15 untrue. If I place it beforehand, that means all this stuff already happened. And I have nothing to be, there's no boogeyman.
Right.
I can't be looking for a beast anymore or an antichrist anymore, because the kingdom of heaven, the time is fulfilled and it's at hand, even though it's been 2,000 years. And Jesus said in Luke that, it doesn't come with observation, but we do have observation in the Tanakh, in Isaiah 11, Isaiah chapter 2, Isaiah 66, all over the place. It says all flesh will bow before God from Shabbat to Shabbat. It says that nation will not learn war anymore. It says there will be peace on earth. It says that the Israel will be back in their land. It says the temple will be rebuilt. I can see those things. That is, I can observe those things.
Right.
So where did Jesus get the idea, for lack of a better term, to say the kingdom does not come with observation?
Right.
Then what is the point of a sign? That
Yeah.
means every sign that points to a Mashiach, that points to the kingdom of heaven, you might as well throw out that verse.
Right. He says the kingdom's within you.
Right. Which is open
How's
to
that
any
falsifiable?
interpretation.
How's that
Anybody.
verifiable?
Right.
Hmm.
Goes back to the mark, right? If the mark is symbolic and it's an idea, can anybody verify what's going on in your mind?
Right.
So if the book of Revelation's mark of the beast is current, Mark 115 is a lie.
Hmm. Yeah.
If it's
A lot
already
of it comes.
happened, there's nothing to look for.
Right.
I'm
Right.
sorry. There's
You're right. You're totally right. And a lot of it comes down to is if you're going to understand out of the 22 chapters of Revelation that 98% of it is figurative and then only 2% is literal, that's doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We can almost understand that the whole of the book is symbological in a way, you know? So it doesn't make sense to pick and choose what you think is actually going to happen literally and what you don't think is simply because it fits your narrative, you know?
I'm you know, had I known that right there, Mark 115, the opening gospel, according to scholars, is one of the best pieces of information to tell you that Christianity is not true.
Right.
The kingdom of heaven is not at hand. And it
And
wasn't
that's all over the
2,000 years
place.
ago.
Right. That same language is all over the place. First Peter, James, Hebrews, the other three gospels all say
No,
it's here. It's at the door. It's at hand. The judge is at the door.
right. Don't get
Everywhere.
married. If you're married, act like you don't have a wife. First Corinthians chapter 7. Why would you tell somebody that?
Right.
Because you're expecting an imminent return of Jesus that never
Mhm.
took place. And if we want to, if I want to be petty, how many times has Jesus come according to Christianity? If he was with the three people in Genesis, he came, right?
He was Melchizedek. He
He was,
came.
that's two. He was
The
the
angel of the
angel
Lord.
of the Lord at the burning bush. That's three, right? Um,
Mhm. Angel of the Lord in the wilderness when the Israelites left Egypt.
That's y'all see the pattern here. If you're gonna place Jesus all over the place, then when we get to the New Testament, he's born, he dies, right? Then when he's resurrected, did he come back?
Yeah, he came twice already, and even in the Christian literature.
You see what I'm saying? Because if you die and your soul leaves your body, because I mean, when you read in when Elijah resurrected somebody, it said his soul came back.
Hmm.
In Genesis, it says Rachel's soul departed. That's what makes you dead, by the way. Your soul has to actually leave your body.
Hmm.
So if your soul comes back to you, that was that Jesus returning. Then if you say, "Oh no, he's got to return on the clouds and all these things," right? Well, that never happened. And if the kingdom of heaven is at hand and he is the reigning king, then how did the fourth beast get a book saying that it's still coming to destroy everything that Jesus set up?
For sure. Yeah, and
Yeah.
the final thought in a lot of modern eschatology, Christian eschatology, I would say, oh, well, it's the revived Roman Empire. And sorry, people, but it doesn't need to revive because it never died. It just changed form. You know,
Yes,
it it,
Esau is a shapeshifter, y'all.
it just changed form. It got a big golden cross on top of it.
Read Psalm 83. Esau has many tents. The tents of Edom have as many tentacles going on there. So yeah, I'm sorry. Mark 115 and Revelations 13 cannot marry.
Right.
One is and one is not. Speaking
Right.
like, speaking like Revelation, right?
Which in reality means they both are not.
They can't the thing is they cannot coexist. The
Right.
kingdom cannot be at hand and Revelation still coming with a boogeyman. Sorry.
Right. And inerrancy for fundamentalists is an all or nothing. It's an all or nothing deal. So if one isn't and one is, that doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
So,
Yeah. So
but all right, my brother. As always, I appreciate it. Um,
think you're the one.
More to come. More to come, guys. We got plenty of material on this topic coming out. So stay tuned. If anything we said helped you out, taught you something, feel free to give us a like, a share, drop a comment, ask us a question, give us super thanks, whatever, anything helps. Check out the description for Davon's books, Clouds of Torah, his YouTube channel. But until next time, from myself, Steve Eisenhower, and the Exodus Project, Davon Mays, Clouds of Torah, we appreciate you guys. We love you guys, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.